The entire nation admired billionaire Kofi Mensah for his wealth, luxury businesses, and powerful influence. Newspapers called him the king of success, yet no one knew the bitterness hidden inside his heart. After being betrayed years earlier by a woman who only wanted his fortune, Kofi stopped believing in love and decided every poor person secretly desired money. To prove his twisted belief, he announced a shocking challenge during a live charity event. Instead of donating millions, he declared he would marry the poorest village girl he could find, not because he loved her, but to show the world that poverty could never stand beside power. His words spread across television, radio, and social media within hours, leaving millions speechless. Deep inside a forgotten village lived Amina, a humble young woman who spent every day caring for sick elders and orphaned children. She had never imagined her quiet life would collide with the country's richest man. As luxury vehicles rolled toward her dusty village, everyone watched in disbelief, unaware that this cruel marriage would awaken a secret powerful enough to change every destiny forever. When the billionaire's assistants finally stood before Amina, they expected tears of gratitude and immediate acceptance. Instead, the young village girl calmly listened as they explained Kofi Mensah's proposal, then looked each of them in the eyes without fear. She asked only one question: why would a man who is everything choose someone who is nothing? The officials avoided her gaze, unable to admit the truth. Around them, villagers whispered excitedly, believing this marriage would rescue Amina from poverty forever. Her aging grandmother, worried about the family's future, gently urged her to consider the offer, reminding her that opportunities like this came only once in a lifetime. Although Amina sensed something deeply wrong behind the billionaire's sudden interest, she also knew refusing could leave her family struggling for years. After a long silence, she accepted the proposal, but only because she believed every hardship carried a hidden purpose. As the luxury convoy departed with preparations already underway, an old blind elder watched from beneath a giant baobab tree and quietly whispered, "The lion believes he has captured a lamb, but he has invited a queen into his palace." No one understood his mysterious warning. 3 days later, the capital city witnessed the most talked-about wedding in the country's history. Every major television station broadcast the ceremony live, while thousands gathered outside the grand cathedral hoping to catch a glimpse of the billionaire and his mysterious village bride. Kofi Mensah arrived in a custom-made black Rolls-Royce, wearing an elegant designer tuxedo and surrounded by elite security. Amina stepped out of a simple white wedding gown that highlighted her natural beauty, yet many wealthy guests laughed quietly at her humble manners and rural background. Socialites whispered that she looked lost among diamonds and luxury, believing she would never belong in their world. Throughout the ceremony, Kofi remained cold and distant, treating the marriage like a business agreement instead of a sacred promise. Even during their wedding photographs, he barely looked at his bride. Unknown to everyone inside the magnificent hall, an elderly woman standing near the entrance stared at Amina with tears in her eyes. She recognized the small golden pendant around Amina's neck, a symbol that had disappeared 25 years earlier with a child everyone believed had died forever. As the towering iron gates of Kofi Mensah's magnificent estate slowly opened, Amina realized she had entered a world completely different from the quiet village she had always known. Marble floors reflected glittering crystal chandeliers, priceless artwork covered every wall, and uniformed servants stood silently in perfect lines. Instead of welcoming his new wife, Kofi handed Amina a thick document filled with strict household rules. She was forbidden from entering his private office, speaking during business dinners, touching family heirlooms, or sitting beside him unless instructed. "Remember why you're here," he said coldly. "You are part of an experiment, not my partner." His relatives laughed openly, treating her like an uneducated servant who had accidentally wandered into a palace. One arrogant cousin deliberately spilled expensive wine near Amina's dress, expecting her to panic, but she calmly cleaned the floor herself without anger or complaint. Her quiet dignity confused everyone watching. Later that night, while unpacking her few belongings in a lonely guest room, Amina gently held the mysterious golden pendant around her neck. Hidden inside the pendant was a tiny folded paper that she had never dared to open, unaware that its contents could destroy powerful families and reveal a truth buried for decades. The following morning, preparations for a grand welcome banquet filled the mansion with activity. Influential politicians, famous celebrities, business tycoons, and international investors were invited to celebrate what the media called the wedding of the decade. Kofi ordered Amina to remain silent throughout the evening and simply smile for the cameras. As guests admired the mansion's breathtaking luxury, an elderly African historian named Professor Jabari arrived carrying a beautifully carved walking cane. Known across the continent for his knowledge of forgotten royal bloodlines, he rarely attended social gatherings, making his appearance a surprise. While greeting the guests, his eyes suddenly stopped on the golden pendant hanging around Amina's neck. His face turned pale, and the smile disappeared from his lips. Quietly stepping closer, he whispered, "Where did you get that necklace?" Before Amina could answer, Kofi interrupted the conversation and led her away. Professor Jabari continued staring at the pendant with growing disbelief, realizing it belonged to the lost princess of the ancient kingdom of Zamani, a royal child believed to have vanished forever 25 years ago. Hidden beneath the billionaire's roof, destiny had just taken its first unstoppable step. Morning sunlight poured through the towering windows of the mansion as preparations for another luxurious day began. While the wealthy family slept late, Amina quietly woke before dawn and walked into the mansion's busy kitchen. She noticed an elderly cook struggling to carry heavy pots and immediately offered her help without expecting praise. Throughout the day, she treated every servant with kindness, learning each person's name and listening to their stories. She shared her own breakfast with a young gardener who had skipped his meal to send money home to his children. Housekeepers who had worked there for decades whispered that no member of the Mensa family had ever spoken to them with such respect. Even the mansion's frightened security dog, known for barking at strangers, calmly approached Amina and rested beside her feet. The unusual moment caught everyone's attention. Hidden behind a balcony, Kofi watched silently through the glass, confused by what he was seeing. He had expected his new wife to complain about luxury rules or beg for expensive gifts, yet she asked for nothing and gave away everything she had. For the first time, a small crack appeared in the wall surrounding his hardened heart, though he refused to admit it even to himself. 2 days after the wedding, an unexpected visitor arrived at the gates of the Mensa mansion. It was the same blind village elder who had warned that Kofi was bringing a queen into his palace. Dressed in his faded traditional robe and leaning on a weathered wooden staff, he insisted on seeing Amina alone. The guards laughed and tried to send him away, but Amina recognized his voice and welcomed him with respect. Sitting beneath an ancient mango tree in the mansion garden, the elder gently held her hands and spoke in a trembling voice. He confessed that on the night Amina was found as a baby, a frightened stranger had placed the child in his arms with a golden pendant and one desperate request: protect her until destiny calls her home. Before the stranger could reveal more, armed men appeared, forcing him to flee into the darkness forever. The elder admitted he had kept the truth hidden to protect Amina from those who wanted the child dead. Unknown to them, one of Kofi's loyal bodyguards secretly photographed their meeting from a distance and immediately sent the images to his employer, unaware that this discovery would soon shake the billionaire's world. Late that evening, Kofi sat alone inside his private office, studying the photographs his bodyguard had secretly taken. The images showed Amina speaking with the blind elder, their expressions filled with trust instead of fear. Curious, he ordered a background investigation, expecting to uncover lies or hidden ambitions. Instead, every report described the same woman. Villagers called Amina honest, generous, and selfless. She had spent years caring for abandoned children, helping elderly neighbors, and refusing money whenever people tried to reward her kindness. Not a single rumor connected her to greed or deception. Frustrated, Kofi walked through the mansion searching for proof that she was pretending. He found her quietly repairing a maid's torn uniform with a needle and thread instead of wearing expensive designer clothes delivered for her. Hidden behind the doorway, he watched the servants smile with genuine affection around her. For the first time in years, guilt crept into his heart. Had he judged an innocent woman because of his own painful past? Before he could answer that question, his phone rang. A mysterious caller spoke only one sentence before disconnecting. "Your wife is not who you think she is, and neither are the people closest to you." The anonymous phone call haunted Kofi throughout the night. By sunrise, he ordered his most trusted investigators to quietly uncover everything about Amina's past without letting anyone inside the mansion know. Unknown to him, someone else had already begun the same search. Across the city, a secret meeting took place inside a luxurious penthouse where three influential figures studied an old photograph of a royal infant wearing the very same golden pendant around Amina's neck. Their leader, a ruthless businessman named Victor Damba, realized the impossible had happened. The lost child they believed had died decades ago was alive. If her true identity became public, billions in hidden royal assets, land, and international investments would legally belong to her. Determined to protect their stolen fortune, Victor ordered his associates to erase every witness connected to the girl's childhood before the truth surfaced. Their first target was the blind village elder. As hired men sped toward the quiet village under the cover of darkness, the elderly guardian unknowingly knelt in prayer outside his humble home, unaware that deadly danger was only minutes away. At the same moment, Amina's golden pendant suddenly slipped from her neck and fell onto the mansion floor, revealing a tiny hidden key concealed inside its ancient design. Amina carefully picked up the tiny golden key, confused by its existence. She had worn the pendant since childhood and never imagined it concealed anything inside. Before she could examine it further, the mansion lights suddenly flickered, and Kofi received an urgent phone call from his head of security. His face turned pale as he rushed toward the front entrance. Miles away, the blind village elder's home had been attacked during the night. The small house was left in flames, but the old man had mysteriously disappeared before the killers arrived. The attackers searched every corner, believing he carried the final proof of the lost princess's identity, yet they found only an empty wooden chest and an ancient map with one section torn away. Furious, Victor Damba realized someone had warned the elder in time. Meanwhile, Kofi ordered additional guards around the mansion, fearing that unknown enemies were now targeting his wife. As Amina looked through the mansion window, she noticed a black SUV parked beyond the gates. A shadowy figure inside stared directly at her before slowly raising a pair of binoculars. At that exact moment, the tiny golden key in her hand began fitting perfectly into a mysterious lock hidden inside an old wooden jewelry box that had been delivered anonymously to the mansion only hours earlier. With trembling hands, Amina slowly inserted the tiny golden key into the antique wooden jewelry box. A soft click echoed through the silent room as the centuries-old lock finally opened. Inside lay a faded velvet cloth protecting several priceless objects, an ancient royal ring engraved with the crest of the Kingdom of Zamani, a sealed handwritten letter, and a beautifully painted portrait of a smiling king and queen holding a baby wearing the very same golden pendant. Before Amina could understand what she was seeing, Kofi entered the room and froze in disbelief. He carefully unfolded the fragile letter, discovering it had been written 25 years earlier by the kingdom's loyal chief advisor. The message warned that corrupt officials had staged a violent coup, murdered members of the royal family, and secretly rescued the infant princess before she could be captured. The advisor ended with a chilling sentence: "Whoever protects this child protects the rightful future of our kingdom." As silence filled the room, Kofi looked from the portrait to Amina's face and realized they shared the same unmistakable eyes. Before either of them could speak, the mansion security alarm suddenly blared through every hallway, announcing that armed intruders had breached the front gates. The piercing security alarm echoed through every corner of the estate as elite guards rushed toward the front gates. Through the surveillance monitors, Kofi watched several masked men force their way onto the property with military precision. Their objective was not money or jewelry. They were searching for Amina. Realizing the danger, Kofi immediately locked the royal box, placed it into a hidden safe, and ordered his chief of security to escort Amina through an underground passage known only to the family. As they hurried through the dimly lit tunnel beneath the mansion, Amina noticed ancient symbols carved into the stone walls that matched the markings on her royal ring. Above them, gunfire shattered the peaceful night while security teams exchanged fire with the intruders. Meanwhile, Victor Damba monitored the attack from a remote command center, convinced that recovering the royal evidence would secure his stolen empire forever. Just as Amina and the guards reached the tunnel's hidden exit inside an abandoned chapel, they discovered the blind village elder waiting calmly beside the altar. He held another sealed scroll in his hands and quietly said, "The first truth has been revealed. Now you must learn why your parents willingly gave up their daughter to save an entire kingdom." Inside the silent chapel, the blind elder carefully broke the ancient wax seal and unrolled the fragile scroll. Written by Queen Amara herself, the message described the kingdom's darkest night. When traitors surrounded the royal palace, the king and queen realized they could not defeat the enemy. Rather than allowing their only daughter to be captured and used to legitimize the stolen throne, they entrusted the infant princess to their most loyal advisor. The queen wrote that the golden pendant, royal ring, hidden key, and sealed documents had been separated so no single person could reveal the entire truth. Each guardian received one piece and swore to protect it with their life until the princess came of age. As Amina read the final lines, tears filled her eyes. Her parents had not abandoned her. They had sacrificed everything so she could live. Kofi silently lowered his head, ashamed that he had humiliated a woman whose family had given up a kingdom to save their child. Suddenly, the chapel doors burst open. Armed men stormed inside, but instead of attacking, their leader removed his mask, knelt before Amina and declared, "Your Highness, the royal guard has finally found you." The captain of the royal guard rose to his feet and presented Amina with a small iron chest that had been protected in secrecy for decades. Inside were original royal decrees, international bank certificates, ancient land ownership records, and encrypted access codes connected to a forgotten royal trust. The captain explained that before the kingdom fell, Queen Amara had transferred enormous wealth into protected accounts across several countries, ensuring that no usurper could legally claim the assets. Only the rightful heir carrying the pendant, ring, key, and official documents could unlock the inheritance. As Kofi examined the evidence, he realized Victor Damba and his allies had built their empire by hiding the existence of the true princess. The fortune was worth billions, but the documents represented something even greater: the legal authority to reclaim the kingdom's history and restore justice to thousands of families who had suffered under corruption. Before anyone could celebrate, the chapel lights suddenly went dark. A red laser sight appeared on the captain's chest, followed by another on Kofi and another on Amina. A cold voice echoed from outside. "Hand over the princess, or everyone inside dies tonight." Silence filled the chapel as the glowing laser sights remained fixed on Amina, Kofi, and the captain of the royal guard. Without warning, smoke grenades exploded through the broken windows, covering the room in thick gray clouds. The captain immediately formed a protective shield around Amina while loyal guards returned fire, buying precious seconds for their escape. Kofi, who had once married Amina only to humiliate her, made a decision that surprised even himself. Ignoring the danger, he rushed toward her, pulled her behind a stone pillar, and used his own body to shield her from flying debris. Together they escaped through a narrow tunnel beneath the chapel, carrying the royal chest and Queen Amara's scroll. Behind them, the captain ordered the tunnel entrance sealed, choosing to remain behind with his soldiers to delay the attackers. As the explosion collapsed part of the ancient chapel, Kofi realized this was no longer about wealth or revenge. Protecting Amina had become his greatest priority. When they finally emerged into a hidden forest at dawn, a black helicopter descended from the sky. The pilot stepped out, saluted Amina, and announced, "Your Highness, the final witnesses are waiting. Today, the world will learn the truth." By sunrise, news of the mysterious attack had spread across the country. Under heavy military protection, Amina and Kofi were secretly flown to the National High Court, where an emergency hearing had been ordered after the royal guard presented newly discovered evidence. Outside the courthouse, thousands of journalists, citizens, and international observers gathered behind security barriers, eager to witness what many believed would become the most important legal case in the nation's history. Inside the courtroom, Victor Damba arrived with the country's most powerful lawyers, wearing a confident smile as though victory was already guaranteed. He publicly dismissed Amina as an ordinary village girl participating in an elaborate fraud. One by one, the royal artifacts were placed before the judges: the golden pendant, the ancient ring, the hidden key, Queen Amara's scroll, and the original royal records. The courtroom fell into complete silence as historians confirmed that every item was authentic. Just as the chief judge prepared to announce the first ruling, the courtroom doors opened once again. An elderly woman entered, supported by two officers, carrying a sealed diary. Looking directly at Victor, she whispered, "I was there the night the royal family was betrayed, and I wrote down every name." The elderly woman slowly approached the witness stand, her hands trembling as she placed the weathered diary before the judges. She introduced herself as Miriam, the former royal nurse who had cared for Princess Amina from the day she was born. For 25 years, she had lived in hiding, protecting the only written record of the palace conspiracy. With the court's permission, she opened the diary and read each entry aloud. Every page described secret meetings between corrupt ministers, powerful businessmen, and military officers who planned to overthrow the royal family and seize control of the kingdom's fortune. The final pages contained handwritten names, signatures, dates, and hidden financial transactions connecting Victor Damba to the stolen royal assets. Gasps echoed across the courtroom as forensic experts confirmed the diary's authenticity. Victor's confident smile disappeared, replaced by visible panic. He accused Miriam of fabricating the evidence, but before his lawyers could object further, a government investigator entered carrying newly recovered banking records that perfectly matched every detail written in the diary. The judges exchanged stunned glances, realizing the conspiracy was far larger than anyone had imagined, and that justice was finally beginning to uncover the truth buried for decades. As the courtroom absorbed the shocking evidence, Victor Damba made one final desperate move. Through his lawyers, he claimed that Kofi had knowingly benefited from businesses connected to the stolen royal fortune and should be treated as part of the conspiracy. Reporters immediately turned their cameras toward the billionaire, expecting him to deny every accusation. Instead, Kofi slowly stood before the judges and admitted that although he had never known the money's true origin, his companies had unknowingly profited from investments linked to Victor's empire. He declared that he would surrender every asset, company share, mansion, and luxury possession acquired through those connections until the investigation was complete. The courtroom erupted in disbelief. Even Amina stared at him in silence. Kofi explained that real justice demanded sacrifice, and he refused to build a future with wealth that might belong to innocent families. The judges praised his honesty, while financial investigators immediately froze billions in questionable assets. Victor's plan had failed. Rather than destroying Kofi's reputation, it transformed him into the first powerful businessman willing to risk everything for the truth. As the hearing continued, a court officer rushed inside with urgent news. Another secret witness had just arrived carrying the original royal crown. The courtroom doors slowly opened as two national heritage officers carried the ancient royal crown inside a sealed glass case. Behind them walked an elderly craftsman named Obesai, the last living royal jeweler whose family had created the crown generations earlier. Sworn under oath, he explained that hidden beneath the crown was a secret engraving known only to the royal bloodline. With the judge's permission, the glass case was unlocked, and Obesai carefully lifted the crown into the light. Turning it over, he revealed an inscription that matched the symbols engraved on Amina's pendant, royal ring, and tiny golden key. The courtroom monitors displayed enlarged images, allowing historians and forensic specialists to compare every detail. Their conclusion was unanimous. The artifacts had been created together for the same royal heir. Victor Damba's lawyers searched desperately for another argument, but every expert confirmed the evidence beyond doubt. Tears filled Amina's eyes as the chief judge addressed her by her royal title for the first time. Before the official declaration could be completed, loud applause erupted outside the courthouse. Thousands of citizens had gathered in the streets, waving royal banners after learning the long-lost princess had finally been found alive. The chief judge rose slowly from the bench as complete silence settled over the courtroom. After reviewing every testimony, historical record, forensic report, and royal artifact, the panel reached a unanimous decision. The court officially recognized Amina as the rightful heir to the kingdom of Zamani and declared every document proving her identity to be authentic. Victor Damba and the surviving members of the conspiracy were immediately found guilty of fraud, corruption, murder, theft of royal property, and decades of organized deception. Security officers moved quickly to place them in handcuffs while reporters captured every historic moment. The judges also ordered the recovery of stolen royal lands, financial assets, and cultural treasures so they could be returned to the people through a public restoration trust led by Amina. Standing before the nation, she surprised everyone by asking the court to show mercy toward innocent families connected to the conspirators, insisting that justice should heal rather than create more suffering. The courtroom erupted into thunderous applause. As Victor was escorted away, he looked back with hatred and whispered, "This is not over." Unknown to everyone, one final secret connected to the royal family's past still remained hidden, waiting to change the ending forever. Several days after the historic verdict, the celebrations across the country slowly faded, but Kofi found no peace within himself. Every time he remembered how he had married Amina only to humiliate her, guilt weighed heavily on his heart. The luxury mansion that once filled him with pride now felt empty despite its endless wealth. One quiet morning, he invited Amina to the palace gardens where the first rays of sunlight covered the flowers with golden light. Without cameras, bodyguards, or reporters nearby, Kofi knelt before her and sincerely apologized for every cruel word, every public humiliation, and every moment he had treated her as less than human. He admitted that his fear of betrayal had turned him into the very kind of person he once hated. Amina listened silently before gently lifting him to his feet. She reminded him that true greatness is measured not by power or fortune, but by the courage to admit mistakes and change. As they shared a peaceful moment, a royal messenger arrived carrying an invitation sealed with the ancient crest of Zamani. The Royal Restoration Council had chosen that very afternoon to crown the kingdom's rightful queen before the entire nation. By afternoon, the Grand Royal Palace courtyard had transformed into a place of history and hope. Thousands of citizens traveled from villages, towns, and cities to witness the long-awaited coronation of the rightful queen of Zamani. Traditional drummers, dancers, and royal guards lined the magnificent ceremonial path as flags fluttered proudly beneath the clear blue sky. Amina entered wearing an elegant royal gown inspired by her ancestors, while the ancient crown rested upon a velvet cushion carried by the oldest member of the royal council. Kofi chose not to stand beside the throne but remained among the honored guests, believing the day belonged entirely to Amina and her people. As the chief elder gently placed the crown upon her head, joyful cheers echoed across the kingdom. Church bells rang, ceremonial drums thundered, and tears filled the eyes of citizens who had waited decades for justice. In her first speech as queen, Amina promised that the kingdom's wealth would rebuild schools, hospitals, farms, and villages instead of enriching a handful of powerful families. As applause filled the palace grounds, white doves soared into the bright sky, marking the beginning of a new era built on compassion, truth, and unity. In the weeks following her coronation, Queen Amina refused to live as a ruler separated from her people. Instead of spending her days surrounded by luxury, she traveled across the kingdom, visiting the same forgotten villages where children studied in broken classrooms and families struggled to find clean water. Every royal treasure recovered from the conspiracy was carefully invested into schools, modern hospitals, roads, farms, and scholarships for young students. Kofi stood beside her, using his business experience to ensure every project remained honest and transparent. Together, they established a public foundation where every financial record could be viewed by ordinary citizens, proving that the era of corruption had truly ended. The villagers who once watched Amina leave in a dusty convoy now welcomed her home with songs, dancing, and grateful tears. She embraced her elderly grandmother before opening the kingdom's first free medical center in the village where her journey had begun. As the celebration reached its happiest moment, the blind village elder quietly approached Amina and handed her one final sealed envelope. Smiling gently, he whispered, "This is the last message your mother ever wrote, and only now are you ready to read it." That evening, beneath the ancient baobab tree where Amina's journey had first begun, she carefully broke the royal wax seal and unfolded her mother's final letter. Every word had been written with love during the darkest hours before the palace fell. Queen Amara explained that true royalty was never measured by crowns, palaces, or treasure, but by the willingness to serve others with kindness and courage. She wrote that if Amina ever reclaimed her rightful place, she must never seek revenge against those who had stolen everything from their family. Instead, she should build a kingdom where justice and mercy walked side by side. Tears rolled down Amina's face as she realized her mother had predicted this very moment decades earlier. Kofi quietly held her hand, promising he would spend the rest of his life helping her fulfill that dream. Together, they buried the letter beneath the baobab tree, creating a simple memorial dedicated to the king and queen whose sacrifice had saved their daughter and ultimately restored an entire nation. As they turned to leave, the first rays of dawn illuminated the horizon, reminding everyone that every ending can become the beginning of a brighter future. Years passed, and the kingdom of Zamani became a symbol of justice, unity, and hope across the continent. Under Queen Amina's compassionate leadership, poverty steadily declined, schools flourished, hospitals reached even the most remote villages, and honest governance restored the people's trust. Kofi, once remembered as the billionaire who married a poor village girl to humiliate her, earned respect as a humble leader who transformed his wealth into opportunities for millions. Together, they established scholarships, orphan care programs, agricultural initiatives, and business funds that helped ordinary families build brighter futures. Every year, on the anniversary of the kingdom's restoration, citizens gathered beneath the ancient baobab tree to honor the sacrifices that had changed history forever. Children listened with wonder as elders told the story of the lost princess who chose forgiveness over revenge and of the proud billionaire who discovered that true greatness comes from serving others. As the celebration ended, Amina looked toward the horizon, smiled peacefully, and whispered, "A crown may belong to one person, but hope belongs to everyone." The camera slowly rose above the joyful crowd, revealing a kingdom united at last, proving that kindness, courage, and truth will always outshine pride, greed, and hatred.